Good morning, Abbey Middle staff, students, and guests. Thank you all for joining us today. Welcome to our Remembrance Day ceremony. This is a time to remember our past and reflect on it so we can move into our future with greater wisdom and understanding. Our goal for today is to have a student-led Remembrance Day ceremony that pays tribute to our veterans and helps us give thanks to those that have helped shape our country. At this time, I would like to call on Javon to present the acknowledgement of Indigenous territory.
Aswayel, we acknowledge that Abbotsford School District is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Stolo people, the Samath First Nation, and Mathwiki First Nation. With this, we respect the long-standing relationships that Indigenous nations have to this land, as they are the original caretakers.
The Abbotsford School District acknowledges historical and ongoing injustices that Indigenous peoples endure in Canada, and we accept responsibility as a public educational institution to contribute toward revealing and correcting miseducation, as well as renewing respectful relationships with Indigenous communities through our teaching and community engagement. Would you please rise for the singing of O Canada? You may be seated.
Thank you to our Abbey Middle Concert Band for playing our Canadian anthem. My name is Jax, and this is Aria, Javon, Dayton, and Kirsten. And we will be leading our assembly today. Remembrance Day is a time to honor all those who have fought and given their lives for the freedoms that we now enjoy. We'd like to thank everyone for being here and listening on this special day of remembrance.
On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, Canadians are asked to pause in memory of the thousands of individuals who sacrificed their lives and volunteered in the military service for our country. This is our opportunity today to remember these proud Canadians.
We remember with honor those from wars past who served with great courage and conviction. We pay special attention to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice, giving their lives in service of our country. We also salute the servicemen and women of today, who risked their lives to fight injustice in pursuit of a better world. On November 11th, we remember and acknowledge our responsibility to work for the peace they fought so hard to achieve, lest we forget.
Yesterday was Indigenous Veterans Day in Canada. We want to honor the sacrifice and commitment of the Indigenous people of Canada who chose to serve in the wars despite ongoing mistreatment towards them. To help us understand more about this, we will watch a video. It is a message from our Canadian Minister of Defense.
I am honored to be speaking to you today from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, as Canada's Minister of National Defense. In 1994, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canadians observed the first Aboriginal Veterans Day. as it was then known, to honor First Nations, Inuit, and Métis veterans. At that time, Indigenous veterans were not recognized at official Remembrance Day ceremonies. Indeed, they were excluded from laying wreaths at the National War Memorial, and their military contributions were often overlooked. Now, every year on November 8th, Canadians across the country pause to mark National Indigenous Veterans Day. We pay tribute to the many Indigenous volunteers who raised their hands to fight for freedom and human rights, which they themselves were often denied. We know of nearly 15,000 Indigenous people who served Canada in the First and Second World Wars alone. We've heard stories of whole families serving and even of multiple generations enlisting. Their reasons for service were as diverse as the rich cultures and communities that they came from. Some joined to defend their country. Others joined to reclaim their warrior heritage, and many joined to escape colonial constraints that persist in many forms to this day. They all deserve to be treated with the same dignity, respect, and appreciation that Canada afforded their non-Indigenous comrades. But instead, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis veterans returned home to a country that refused their benefits, seized their land, stripped them of their status, and denied their right to vote. Today, more and more Canadians are learning about Indigenous veteran service, sacrifice, and resilience. We all have a duty to tell their stories and pass them on to the next generation. Earlier this year, Canada's first Indigenous Governor-General, Mary Simon, marked the 20th anniversary of the National Aboriginal Veterans Monument in Ottawa. She noted that throughout history, Indigenous veterans have bravely served on land, sea, and in the air, alongside allies, believing that they could make a difference. Indeed, they have done so throughout Canada's military history. The Gagnon brothers from Kitikan-Zibi fought in the Battle of the Somme. Saskatchewan Métis paratrooper Noel Joseph Pinet served heroically in the Second World War, and his service inspired his son to design the National Aboriginal Veterans Monument. And today, we can look to leaders like Petty Officer First Class Katrina Stewart from Nisga'a Nation in British Columbia, who began her Navy career nearly 2 decades ago. Her vast experience includes deployments around the world and work with new Indigenous recruits to the military through the CAF's Aboriginal Entry and Summer Youth programs. Now, she co-chairs the Regional Defense Aboriginal Advisory Group and serves as a senior demolition instructor. Her story is one of thousands, and today is an occasion to tell those stories. To the many Indigenous veterans of our Canadian Armed Forces, you have made enormous sacrifices for our freedom and our security, and you have helped build a more peaceful and prosperous world. We thank you today and every day, lest we forget.
This morning, Miss Douglas brought me a wreath from the Indigenous Department, and that's the one that's sitting there. And this here on stage is called a cenotaph. And a cenotaph is usually made of stone, and it's in communities, and it's a marker as a monument to remember where fallen soldiers from the past. So the front says 1914 to 1919, that's World War I, and on the side it's got the dates for World War II. Okay, Kristen? Kirsten?
South Asian Canadians have always understood the importance of defending their country, even as they face varying levels of discrimination in their fight to serve. Since the arrival of the earliest Punjabi settlers, they have contributed to military operations at home and around the world. At the start of World War I, many young Canadians volunteered to join the country's armed forces. However, many Black and Asian men were told that they could not enlist. Some battalions during the First World War did not welcome everyone. This next video will help us understand more about the significant
contributions of Indian people in Canada and abroad.
While we remember the sacrifices of Canadians in past wars, we also want to think about those in our school community who have had to flee war-torn countries. Today, 3 of our own Abbey Middle students are courageously sharing their stories with all of us.
Choir, you may make your way to the front. You have experienced the impact of war firsthand. We are so glad to have you part of our Abbey Middle family. This is a good reminder to everyone that we all have our own unique stories, and we should take the time to get to know one another. Let's work toward peaceful solutions in our conflicts at school, on the playground, and outside of school. And let's commit to showing kindness and empathy in the way we treat one another.
We will now hear from our amazing Abbey Middle Choir. They will be singing Hey Brother. This song was chosen because it describes the help our fallen soldiers gave us in protecting our freedom.
Thank you, Abbey Middle Choir and Mr. Nelson, for sharing that beautiful song. Writing was and continues to be an important way for soldiers and those impacted by war to express their feelings. Poetry is one way to communicate these difficult ideas. Javon and Dayton will read Dr. John McCrae's famous poem, In Flanders Fields.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below.
We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved. And now we lie in Flanders fields.
Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw, the torch be yours to hold it high.
If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow
In Flanders fields.
We are now going to watch the video that we were going to watch a few moments ago. So, Mr. Neal, you can play that when you're ready.
Twist and turn away. If you tear yourself into again, if I could, yes I would. If I could, I would let it go. Leave this heart of clay.
According to the Royal Canadian Legion, the poppy has stood as a visual symbol of our Canadian remembrance since 1921. The reason for its adoption over 100 years later in Canada was due to, in no small part, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae and his now famous poem, In Flanders Fields.
At one time, lapel poppies were made by veterans with disabilities in workshops in Montreal and Toronto, and served as a small source of income for the veterans and their families. Though made in factories, poppies production continues under strict Legion control. Today, we encourage all Canadians to proudly wear a poppy. By doing so, our veterans will see that their efforts and sacrifices are not in vain. In other words, they will know that we will remember them.
The last post is played as a final farewell, symbolizing the fact that the duty of the dead soldier is over and that they can rest in peace. This song represents sunset or the end of a soldier's life, and begins a period of quiet reflection for those present.
Once last post is completed, there will be 2 minutes of silence where heads are bowed and 1 remains in somber silence. At the end of the 2 minutes of silence, the bugler will play reveal, symbolizing sunrise or resurrection. Please rise to the last post.
You may be seated.